slight bend to the arms will help you out. And then from there, bring it up here, drop it down. Hey guys, Coach Keith Keppner here in a new location. Merged our Keppner Boxing Athletes location together with awesome X3 location, and now we are partnered together. And pretty amazing facility, right? All right, what we're getting into has to do with some of this amazing stuff in this facility: strength and conditioning. As a boxer, it can be very hard to figure out what you need to do, and you see stuff on YouTube, you see stuff on Instagram that's exciting, and that's not necessarily what you need to do, because oftentimes the exciting stuff is not the important stuff. So I'm going to help you break through all the noise, help you eliminate the unnecessary stuff, and focus on the necessary stuff that is proven over time, but also I've seen personally and with my fighters and boxers actually make a benefit. Okay? So if you haven't already, make sure you click like, subscribe, comment below. Let's get into strength and conditioning for beginner to intermediate boxers. I'm going to be talking about both beginner and intermediate throughout this whole video, because it's important for even an intermediate to revisit those basic foundational building blocks that help us get in great shape and also help us get stronger. Okay? So as a fighter, you really have three ingredients that you need. First off is your conditioning, right? Some type of ability to actually just perform, because this is an athletic sport. And if you don't have that basic conditioning, it doesn't matter all the other stuff you have. It doesn't matter about the next two items, however much you have of those, because someone might just beat you based off of conditioning alone. And this really, really applies to beginners and you going into your first few fights, because as we all know that have done that, if you're not in shape, you're not going to be able to actually execute on any of the stuff that you've been working on in the gym. All right? So number one is conditioning, but conditioning not alone, because I've seen plenty of fighters focus only on their conditioning, largely. And everything they're doing, they act like it's boxing related or skills related, and it's really not. It's just conditioning drill, conditioning drill, conditioning drill, conditioning drill. And they're going to max out pretty quickly as far as how they're able to measure up against their competition. But conditioning, as a beginner, probably the most important thing. And as an intermediate, it's still very high up there. Now it becomes a little bit more equal with the other items. Let's go to the next one, skills, right? You got to have technique. You got to have the ability to adapt and to actually think through this sport that is very highly skilled and complex, called boxing, all right? We're not talking about skills in this video. We're talking about strength and conditioning, so I'm going to jump to the next one. You can have great conditioning, you can have great skills, but if you don't have the will, it won't matter. All right? So that's something, again, that's more of the psychological aspects, which we're not going to go into in this video, but I've had plenty of requests on, and I think I'm probably going to talk about perhaps in the next video. So those are the ingredients you need, three, and that's something that I've really focused on, is obviously those first two, which are the easiest to control for, because I've seen great coaches teach a lot of skills, make very high-level fighters or guys that know a lot of techniques and are able to execute on those techniques, but if they don't have the conditioning base, it doesn't matter. And then I've seen vice versa, where they have the conditioning base, it's phenomenal, they're the best conditioned freaking boxer around, but they don't have very good skills. All right, so I'm going to mix in both intermediate, like I said, but what's important is when we're going into a sport like boxing is that it's better to have some type of base. If you have some type of athletic background, that's helpful, and the more that you have that, it's just going to be helpful as you adapt to the training. It's not completely necessary, but it's going to allow you to fast track everything you do when you start training. With myself, I didn't have much athletics at all. I spent a lot of my younger years not doing athletics, so therefore when I got into boxing, I didn't have what's called an aerobic base. And you see that with some other people as well in combat sports. Think about people like maybe Kimbo Slice, if you ever heard of that guy. May he rest in peace. But he played football or whatever, right? But he didn't build up a great conditioning base. And so when you get into your later years, into your late 20s and 30s, if you don't have that aerobic base built up, by that time, it's fairly hard to build it up. Not that you can't, but it's fairly hard to build it up. And so that's where building up that base, if you've never been an athlete before, is so important, right? You can want to do all the strength training stuff, all the explosive stuff, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But take my word for it, if you're someone that was like me, that came from not doing sports, it's very important to build up that aerobic base. Now, what I mean by that aerobic base, think about pure aerobic stuff like riding a bicycle, jogging, things like that. Very important to just prep you. And think about it, in the periodization model, that's the first one, is you build up your endurance, your aerobic base, so that therefore you can go on to the harder work down the road. And that's actually going to help you recover faster from that, because if you lack aerobic base, your recovery between workouts is not going to be very good. And I'll get into a little bit more of those nuances as we go through this video. All right, now, again, as a beginner and intermediate, but definitely beginner, 100%, specificity of training is essential, okay? If you have two guys, one guy goes in the boxing gym, does his shadow boxing, mitt work, works with a coach, does drills, does sparring, and that's all he does, versus the other guy that is swimming, you know, doing like throwing logs or something, or just, you think of all like the Rocky montage stuff, and you compare those two guys together, and maybe the guy punches some meat and stuff like that, and you have those two guys go against each other, and you do that over and over again enough to get a good sample size. This guy, when we're taking beginners, is going to beat the hell out of this guy at the 80% to 90% of the time. All right? But oftentimes, because boxing is cool, and oftentimes we get into boxing because we think it's cool, right? And we see the training stuff, the montages. Again, Rocky. I really blame Rocky for dropping the level of boxing training or of skills training in boxing, just making everybody be like, oh, well, I just need to be in amazing shape, and then I need to have heart. So amazing shape, heart, and then they miss the skill part. So specificity of training, a question I get from beginners all the time is, hey, coach, what do I need to do to get in better shape for boxing, for this thing, man? What do I need to do? Like, I'm going to tell them, oh, man, there's this exercise you do. It's a push-up. You know, it's a sled pull. It's the rowing machine. It's some random thing. You need to do power cleans. That's what's going to get you in shape for boxing, not all this other stuff that's boxing. And so what I say to people when they ask me that question, because you might be in the same spot, right? You're at that lowest level of competency where you don't even know what you don't know. I'll tell them, hey, if you were going to be swimming, or going to be a swimmer, you wanted to compete in swimming, you wouldn't ask that question. You wouldn't be like, hey, coach, what do I need to do in addition, or like, what do I need to do to get in better shape for swimming? Coach would be like, you keep swimming, and you just swim more. You get your skills better with swimming, but then also your body adapts to swimming. And so I see that idea is lost on a lot of people. Again, they see the high-level pros and everything else that train a lot of different things for certain reasons I'm going to talk about later. But you have to not avoid the boring stuff, not avoid the stuff that is consistently going to work for you, which is the specific movements you're doing in your sport. Okay, so what is the most specific movement that you can do that is the sport of boxing? It's boxing. And it's boxing somebody else, it's sparring. But ideally, obviously, it would be great if we could spar every day, but we can't, right? It's going to destroy us as a human and our brain and everything else in our body. And also sometimes actually create some technical flaws if we spar too often. I've seen that happen where guys that are sparring very often, meaning even just a couple times a week, will sometimes have skill degradation occur because they just start falling away from being mindful of their technique. Because obviously when you're sparring, it's hard to be mindful of all of your technique often, especially if you're a beginner or even intermediate. And so therefore, it's important to know how to titrate these things and where to place them. So therefore, since we can't do sparring all the time or fighting all the time, right? You need to do it if you're a beginner or intermediate, obviously. If you can't do that, what's the next best thing? Next best thing is shadow boxing. And shadow boxing, obviously, ton of benefits with some disclaimers on it, okay? So Shadow boxing, probably going to be about the best sport-specific thing that you can do for boxing as a beginner and also as an intermediate to get in better shape for this sport called boxing, along with a few other things. So here are the benefits first, and then I'm going to give you, though, the drawbacks or the limitations of shadow boxing for conditioning. And then later I'm going to get into strength, by the way. All right, so the benefits of shadow boxing for getting ready for the sport of boxing. It says boxing in it, so obviously it's very sport specific. So therefore, your adaptations are going to be precisely the adaptations you need to have to do this thing. And something that I love about shadow boxing, so you can do, literally every single move that you need to be doing in the ring, right? You're moving forward, backwards, lateral movement. When you're throwing punches, you can come forward with the jab, things like that, move around with the jab, throw your combinations, everything else, move around the ring, shadow box in a ring, and get familiar with that, that area and how to work it, right? Everything that you can be doing in the sport of boxing. Defense, head movement, everything is in shadow boxing. You know that already, but for those of you that maybe forgot about that. Now, the last benefit of shadow boxing is that it trains you and conditions you to miss punches. So you have the training and skill ability to miss punches and be on balance, like I've talked about in my videos. But also as well, I find that guys that don't shadow box, and to be clear, shadow box hard. I'm talking about maximum rotation on your punches, like you would throw to knock someone the hell out. The same way you throw a punch to knock someone the hell out or to try to break someone's ribs, that's how you need to be able to throw in shadow boxing, specifically if you're using it for a conditioning benefit, but also as a skills benefit. But so there's the skill aspect of learning how to miss and be on balance, but then what that also does, it helps build up the muscles that activate when you miss in your back. And if you don't do that, if you're only hitting bags and things like that and only doing just light, easy shadow boxing, I have a little pet theory that sometimes when guys dislocate shoulders and things like that, it's because of that. I've never had a guy dislocate a shoulder. And I think part of that reason might be a little bit of luck, right, and sample bias, but it's because they shadow box hard and they know how to miss punches and they know how to miss hard punches, right? Because you can know how to miss light punches. Anyone can do that. But to miss hard punches, keep your balance, and be able to react defensively or offensively off of that and keep you safe is so important. So there's a benefit of in the legs and the base that you built, keeping the balance and everything else in the back and also in the torso. In the posterior delts and everything else, even in the biceps as well, because you're locking to keep that arm from hyperextending. That's a big thing too as well, is that, talking about getting in great shape for boxing, if your elbows are all messed up and everything else, shoulders messed up, it's going to be hard to get in great shape for boxing. So therefore, we got to train this stuff, but also condition this stuff. All right. Now, let's talk about the challenges for shadow boxing. Challenges for shadow boxing is that it's so hard to gauge effort. Right? You can be shadow boxing and you can tell coach, or even in your own mind, think that you're throwing punches hard and you're not really. The body oftentimes can be lazy and you think you're throwing punches like you'd be throwing to hit somebody and you're really not. And I know this because, for instance, I'll have someone shadow box and they'll look good. Like they'll have everything on balance and they'll look good. And then the moment I have them hit the mitts and then I take a mitt away for them to miss it, now their balance is not very good. And it's like, well, obviously then, the way you're throwing those punches are not the same in shadow boxing as you do when you try to hit somebody. So you got to make them the same. And with enough time, you can feel when you are doing it and when you aren't doing it. Obviously, visualization, things like that, very important. All right, now, the other drawback of shadow boxing only for conditioning, because, my dad was old school, and so he really had that approach of it's just like you freaking shadow box your butt off hard as you can, round after round after round after round, and that's the best conditioning you can do, period. All right? So there's a downside because it's hard to gauge the effort. It's hard to measure, right? How much better are you getting in shape with all those punches, right? And how hard are you throwing those punches? Very hard to gauge with shadow boxing, right? But now there's also a skills and conditioning drawback that occurs where those two things can conflict, because sometimes out of just pure trying to condition with shadow boxing, you can start to build these like patterns and habits that are not going to be beneficial for your actual competition. All right. And that's a real nuanced point. Not going to get deep into that one. I'm going to jump into the last little wrap up of challenges, or how to overcome rather those challenges of gauging effort in shadow boxing. So one way you can gauge effort in shadow boxing is one way I've done with a lot of my boxers is keep count of the punches, all right? So yeah, I'm not sure if all those punches are ultra hard, but at least that's some type of metric of effort, okay? Better than nothing. So that way after, that one round, we know we did 100 punches. And if we do 100 punches 6 rounds, we know we're good. I honestly can't, well, rather, let me give you a better number. It's more like oftentimes in the 200 punch range, we're talking like a 3-minute round. So that's one way you can do it. Coach sit on the side, and also I think they have like little wraps and apps, stuff like that you can use. But anyway, that's one way to do it. Okay. Another way to do it is also to do drills with your shadow boxing, so you can use the benefits of missing and activating all the muscles when you miss and everything else of shadow boxing to condition yourself and make it structured. So like, what are some drills you can do in order to do that? One is to just one thing that I have a lot of my boxers do is start for one rope, jab all the way across the ring, as many jabs as you can. You get to that rope, throw a combination that's at least 3 punches, right? 3 to 5 punches, as much as 6. And then just do that again, do that again, do that again, do that again. So that could be one round. Another round could be maybe you do a certain number of jabs off to the side and throw a combination. And that's another way that you can make a very specific sequence or combination that you're going to run over and over and over again in that one round, so you can keep track of how many times you run it, and it's a better way to gauge your effort. One thing that a lot of folks do with shadow boxing to make it harder or to gauge effort, right, is to use dumbbells. Now, there is a use for it. We do incorporate them, at least with our training with Keppner Boxing, but there's some downsides, right? I've talked about the downsides. There is an effect on skill that I see can happen, particularly if you're using dumbbells to warm up. I know it's like a really popular thing, or at least it was at one time. And people think it makes you faster. It doesn't make you faster. It does build endurance. But again, if you're squeezing these dumbbells, it's going to be affecting your form. If you're not actually throwing your punches with the velocity that you'd be throwing them, it's going to affect your technique. And also priming your body for the actual moves you need to be doing. Now, if you want to use these for your conditioning, that's fine. The best place, the greatest place to use these things is at the end of your workout. That's the time to get those dumbbells, and maybe you can punch out like this, punch out like that, things like that, that are not going to affect your work, your skill work, or your boxing specific work. Also remember, why do dumbbells not make you fast? Because when you shoot out a punch with a dumbbell, you're going to spend about 40%, let's just say it's even 30%, a third of that extension, slowing down the velocity of the movement. So therefore, you're training your body to slow down as you go out, actually, okay? Am I saying that, oh, you're going to be slow as dirt because you use dumbbells and shadow box? No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's not going to help as much as you think it is. Yes, it can build strength endurance or arm endurance. Yes, but again, at what cost? And also, we only have a finite amount of time. Let's do the most important things and the most beneficial stuff, as much as we can, particularly when you're a beginner and an intermediate. Now, when we're talking about ways that we can gauge our training or our conditioning, right? I told you that one of the biggest downsides of shadow boxing is our ability to do that, because it's hard to gauge effort. Even if we work drills that are very specific, and you do this drill first round, this drill second round, etc., and you do it a certain number of times, now you have a metric of how hard you're working. There is a big downside to that because of just how hard you're throwing those punches. It can change punch to punch, day to day, and gauging on how you feel is very subjective. Very subjective. And it's just, there's going to be a lot of limitations. And I know, because I've experienced those limitations, as well as with people that I've trained throughout the years. Now, what do we do rather that has a very specific metric that we can use, or a way that we can really quantify the quality of our training? Well, one is jump rope. That's a great one, right? Yes and no, because again, we still fall into the challenges. Again, I'm not saying you shouldn't jump rope. It's great conditioning stuff. It helps get you lighter on the feet. I feel there's almost a, dare I say, like nervous system effect, and obviously timing thing that it helps you with, of just being lighter on the feet. Because you're forced to be lighter on those feet, I feel like it helps prime people be lighter on the feet, and it does help you get in great shape. But again, those number of skips, how many skips are you doing in a minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it is, 30 minutes? You don't have a good metric of it. All right, so therefore it fails the metric test. Then we have swimming. Swimming is you can definitely have that time. You can know how much time it is, and it's a great thing to incorporate for certain factors, all right, in your training. And obviously same with jump rope. Now we can time it, the distance. We know all those things. All those factors stay the same. One reason why I'm not big on recommending swimming is because one is that you're not just on your legs, on your feet. So it is enough different that I feel it's not going to transfer as much as some other things. And then also there's a big skill gap sometimes where you actually maybe aren't getting that much better condition-wise, but you're just getting better skilled at swimming, and as well as the breathing portion. The breathing is different than what it would be in your actual boxing, so that runs into challenges as well. Again, swimming, a great thing to incorporate maybe in certain periods of training, maybe as a way to just mix it up. Absolutely. But that's not top of my list to recommend. Then you have bicycling, right? Whether it's a stationary bike or biking out on the road. Now we can gauge how far we're going, how fast we're going. The challenge with this is, again, we're on pedals. It's different. It's not the feet to the floor. And as well, I feel that because you're not incorporating any arm movement at all, or I mean practically very little, there's maybe isometric, it's just not going to get the heart rate going the way we want it to go. All right, so out of all these things, that good old road work, running, in my opinion, is going to be about the best thing you can plug in addition to your shadow boxing, bag work, and everything else that you're doing that's just actually specific and to the sport of boxing. All right, now with running, we can often not know what the hell to do, and I see that hold people back a lot. Like, okay, well, I'll run, and I ask them how much they're running. I'm like, well, I'll run a mile once a week. That's not going to do very much unless you're just at the lowest of the low of the low of the low of the low of conditioning. Now, granted, when I started boxing, running probably a mile a week probably would have benefited me. But again, assuming that you're at a medium level. Now, with running, though, let's talk about the benefits of running specific to boxing, and then we'll talk about how many miles to do and things like that in a week and how to work our training around that. With running, first off, you gauge effort, right? Because you can measure how fast you're going, over what distance, and if you run in the same places or you run on a treadmill, I love running outside though, but if you run the same place, you have a good solid metric of effort. And you know, hey, I've been running 7 45-minute miles. I've been running 8-minute miles. And that is what I'm doing. And therefore, if you're not doing that, you know you're not going as hard. And if you are doing that, you're going as hard. If you're going faster, you're actually going harder and you're increasing conditioning. It's a very easy and awesome metric. And also, it takes almost no equipment. We all have a phone now that we can use to track how fast we're going and things like that. All right, and also to keep a log. All right, so it makes it real easy. Then it's on your feet, right? So you're building up, and of course, you know, when you're running, don't be running with your heels and things like that. So you're building up a lot of those muscles that also jump rope does build up. It helps you learn how to be lighter on your feet when you run lightly on the feet. Okay, and then also, not that you want to arm pump it up a lot, but again, I notice there's a benefit with some types of running to help with arm endurance as well as just full body endurance. All right. Then also, it helps you learn to control your breathing. Running helps you learn how to pace your breathing out. And that's something I see a lot of times when people start boxing, or if they're just not running enough and they're intermediate, is they'll have trouble controlling and quote, catching their breath and kind of bringing their heart rate back down to that just a little bit more smooth level. And that's where I notice running is a great way that you just got to focus on your breath the whole time. You're stuck with that one activity, and there's a lot of benefits to it. And the last one with running, like with a lot of these sports, specifically boxing, and I know from experience with running, I'm sure with swimming too as well, relaxation. Running is a fixed motion that you have things to focus on, controlling the breath and also focusing on relaxing. How can you run fast, lightly, and as relaxed as possible because it's going to help all those things, right? The shoulders relaxing, everything relaxing while still putting out a lot of effort and controlling the breath. Okay, so those are all the benefits of it. There are some downsides to running that you do need to watch out for if you do it all the time, or rather, excuse me, hopefully you will do it all the time, but that you need to watch out for is I notice as we get better at running, because there is obviously as well a skill component to it, that sometimes it can almost teach your body to be too up straight because that's beneficial for running, which you could argue is a good counterbalance to all the kind of anterior slouch that there is in boxing. So that could be a benefit. But just be careful that running doesn't kind of make you just be like this all the time when you're boxing, because I have seen it have sometimes a little bit of that effect. Also with the chin up, because when you run, the chin up is going to be very good for you, right? Having the head up here versus in boxing is going to be very bad for you, okay? So those are the things you just need to watch out for. Everything has a trade-off, upside and downside. Now let's talk about our miles with running, okay? So what does running look like in a week for you, ideally as a beginner and an intermediate for boxing training, okay? So you're doing your actual sport-specific stuff 3, 4, 5 times a week, depending, right? You're a beginner, maybe 3, 4, depending what your base level is. You're more advanced, intermediate, then it's getting to that 5 range. All right, now with miles, less conditioned people, about 8 to 10 miles a week. More conditioned people, as they build up, 10 to 12, sometimes as much as 10 to 15, depending how it is. You know, listen to your body. And again, when it starts taking away from your boxing training and your progress with that, then tack it back a little bit. That's too much. Because again, I've talked to so many coaches, and in my experience of working with fighters, so often a guy will just burn himself out with all the other stuff, even with running, and they come to the gym and their performance is crap. And it's like, hey, look, cut it out. Cut it out. And a lot of times, or sometimes with guys, if they just cut out all the ancillary stuff, even if the ancillary stuff is the stuff that I'm recommending, they see a massive benefit right off the get-go, because part of getting in better shape, part of increasing conditioning and increasing strength is recovery. And so therefore, it doesn't mean you need to do a cold plunge or a sauna and all, whatever, just blah, 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 or buy the newest supplement. But what does recovery mean? It means just tack that back a little bit. Tack that back a little bit and pay attention to your performance and see if it increases. All right, so anyway, how do we break up that 8 to 12 miles a week, okay? Because you're like, man, what the hell do I do? Do I do like just 3 miles here until I hit that 12? Let's talk about it. First off, once a week, I recommend having a slower, long-distance run. And in this case, a long-distance run is going to be about 5 miles, somewhere in that ballpark. Could be a little bit more, depending on your level. Could be a little bit less. With this slow, longer run, the focus is not going fast. So the focus is simply to breathe and almost look at it as a recovery run, because you're increasing a lot of massive blood flow throughout your entire body, and it's going to help restore everything and heal muscles, everything else. Because all of the recovery stuff that I mentioned, right, whether it's like cold plunge or this, that, and the other thing, it's just increasing blood flow. So running's going to do the same thing. Oh, well, it moves your limb. Exercise does all the same thing. It's all the same stuff. All right. And then also you're helping to learn how to regulate your breathing, which is so paramount for you as a boxer. When you go back in that corner, regulate the breathing, and also when you're in the round, regulate the breathing. Just yesterday, I was having some guys spar, and I could hear the breath getting elevated on the inside. Hey, and I said, focus on smoothing that breath out, all right? Now, that long run, once a week, then about 2 to 3 mile runs, about 2, maybe 3 times a week, okay? And on those 2 to 3 mile runs, you're looking at going pretty fast, but at a clip that you can maintain. Yes, there's a benefit to whatever it is, like interval runs where you run fast, go slow, run fast, go slow, and you could make an argument for that mimics the pacing of a fight. Yes, absolutely. Also, though, I just love the ability for somebody to get that effort elevated and keep it there, because if you know how to do that, in my personal opinion, then when you do need to put out that effort tack it back, put out that effort, tack it back. It's easier. Also, gauging effort becomes easier as well, because you're gauging how fast you're doing miles versus, what was this, whatever, 20 seconds that you sped up, or minute you sped up, minute you dropped down. Not that you can't track it, but again, let's keep it simple. You can get more advanced as you go through this. Keep it simple. Keep it simple, stupid, starting off, all right? And then last thing is, let's put in some sprints, 1 to 2 times a week. What do these sprints look like? I like hundreds, 100 yards. That's something that was recommended to me from a Muay Thai coach that coached a lot of champions. And it made a big difference for me, because I asked him, I was like, hey, what the hell can I do? Because my condition was struggling. And he said, incorporate sprints. What do I do? Sprint the straight, walk the curve. Sprint the straight, walk the curve. Sprint the straight of the track, right? Or if you don't have a track, find a spot that's eyeball it about 100 yards, sprint it down, recover for, let's say, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, and then sprint again. When you first start off, do a little warm-up of maybe 5 minutes of just slow running, jogging, and then your first couple sprints, do not hit it all the way out, and then your last few, hit it all the way as hard as you can, full maximum effort. And start off going around with maybe, depending what your level is, maybe 5, 6 of these 100-yard sprints, close to full effort. Maybe 4 of the 6 is full effort, and first 2 are not quite. Then as you tack up, get yourself up to doing 8, even doing 10, and it can make a big difference in your conditioning base. So to wrap up this conditioning section, before we go to talk about strength training aspects for boxing, first is sport specific. Number 1, whether you're beginner or intermediate, unless you have some type of injury, all right, that's a whole other caveat. If you have some type of injury, shoulders are shot, things like that, hand is messed up, then you might want to tack back a little bit of the sport specific stuff. But again, if you're a beginner, it's got to be sport specific, big time, big time. You are wasting your time if you want to be a good boxer. If you're not prioritizing, number 1, sport specific training, you are lying to yourself. Then the second one is to fill into that, and to fill into the gaps is running. All right. And if you have trouble running, I'm going to talk about some things we can do to help you be better with it, because I know a lot of people have some different issues with running. So I'll address that a little bit later in the video. And then number 3 is a fill-in. Okay, a fill-in. It's good to stay active, right? It's good to stay active as an athlete. You don't want to do what I made the mistake of doing, like when I was boxing in Mexico, where I would just sit around all day and try to conserve my energy so that I had it for the gym. Okay, I didn't have to work a job or anything else, so I just conserved my energy so I could max out in the gym when I boxed. But it didn't work out, because an object that's not in motion tends to not stay in motion, and it's hard to switch out those 2 cycles. And also as well, you're just kind of sluggish then when you go to the gym, versus the guy that, for instance, maybe plays a little bit of soccer here and there with his friends, or is just active, or even just goes hiking and walks, right? Some type of fill-in, swimming, whatever, something is that you enjoy that's separate from this thing called boxing, that helps keep you moving. Because the more you can make just being moving and being an athlete your lifestyle, if it isn't already, the better condition you're going to be as a boxer. All right, so now we're going to get into strength training and concepts with that. All right, guys, so let's talk about strength training as it relates to boxing. So we talked about the conditioning. Let's talk about how to implement some basic strength training modalities into what we're doing. A lot of times I see guys in the gym who are training for boxing, and they're doing some just extra nonsense where I'm going to do a bunch of curls, I'm going to do a bunch of tricep extensions, or just things that are not going to be very applicable to what they're going to be doing. Now, you as an athlete, you need to focus on, obviously, multi-joint movements, right? So what are those? Deadlift, squat, a row, a press of some type. So multi-joint, you're using, your knee, ankle joint, hip joint, and that's where you actually be able to strengthen yourself in the patterns you need to be doing in the sport of boxing, not focusing on just isolation. Isolation does have a place, but not so much in sports. Or if it does, it's a little bit to do injury prevention or to work on an area for certain reasons. But again, we're talking beginner, intermediate. We're not talking advanced or very specific circumstances. It's one thing that's really important with the strength training items is that we want to make sure we don't do a lot of anterior work and more posterior. So what do I mean? More work on your back because so much of boxing is extension. It's anterior. It's in the front. So those muscles get worked a lot, and oftentimes there can be, quote unquote, an imbalance that can end up creating more problems down the road for you than is necessary. And that's where I find that guys that focus a lot on things like bench press and things like that are going to not benefit their boxing so much. I know it, obviously you think, okay, well, if I do a lot of bench press, that's going to make me better at throwing punches. But obviously, like we know, we don't push punches. You throw punches. Not that it doesn't have a benefit to get stronger extending, but you're already doing so much extending in the sport of boxing. It's really important to build up the back. And a lot of people think that perhaps the stronger your back is, the less your nervous system is going to hold back how hard you throw punches because you're not worried about your ability to keep the joints from hyperextending. And so that's where I find that guys that do focus on their back muscles, rowing, pull-ups, things like that, have a big benefit, all right? So again, focus on core muscle or big movements. You can do it just like a power rack, so a deadlift, a squat, some type of press, military press. I know a lot of people love. One thing is just watch out, make sure not to go maybe too heavy, because again, you as a beginner, you're going to be doing so much work with your shoulders that you're not used to doing. There could be definitely overuse injuries. And that goes back as well to talking about things like bench press for boxing, is that again, you're doing so much anterior stuff that if you do more of that, it's so much. And remember, boxing is a ballistic sport. It's causing trauma on your joints and everything else. And so it's going to help build up muscles and also make joints stronger, but it also is going to just cause a lot of wear and tear. And if you do a lot of heavy weightlifting with it as well, that can cause more wear and tear. So you as a boxer, I put conditioning first because that is number one. You have conditioning, but also it is important, and it's a part of the conditioning curve to have a certain strength ability. But again, like I talked about in the conditioning part, if it starts taking away from your sport-specific training, your actual boxing workouts, cut it back or cut it out, all right? Now, I just talked about multi-joint movements and that being beneficial as an athlete. By the way, real quick, I've experienced this in the last year for myself, gotten back into weightlifting, and I started off just for the fun of it, since I don't box or anything anymore, doing a lot of single joint movements, right? Leg extensions, things like that, flies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And man, when I would do some boxing stuff, I just wouldn't feel as together, right? The muscles weren't, I wasn't able to fire and recruit fibers in the patterns of actual athletic movement. I was doing it in, again, just a closed range single joint. But when I started incorporating just back in some basics, right, the big things that I'm talking about here, then I felt it able to, or rather have more of an effect when I actually do some boxing work myself, all right? So that's just a little reminder I had over the last year. Now, I just talked about multi-joint being so important, right, compound movements, but let's talk about where we do want to put in single joint movements, all right? The number one single joint movement, in my opinion, for boxing is probably going to be a reverse fly. All right, so you can do it on a bench or whatever, but you're here, reverse fly. That's going to be so essential because, like I talked about, all of the anterior work that you're doing with your shoulders and everything else of throwing punches here, whether it's straight hooks or uppercuts, it's all up here. Building that up is going to be very, very, very important. And that's where shadow boxing, missing hard punches, helps with that, helps build up that back in the posterior delt. But doing the reverse flies will be very beneficial. Do it with lighter weight, higher reps, because, you know, they're smaller muscles and you don't need to be trying to load up. Also, you don't want to swing it because, again, we don't want to cause necessarily trauma to those fibers, right? We're not trying to tear those fibers so they can build back together bigger and stronger. That's not the goal. The goal is to increase blood flow, to increase recruitment of those motor units there. That's the goal, all right? And almost think of it as like a prehab-rehab type exercise. You're not going to do prehab or rehab exercises loading up 30-pound dumbbells doing reverse flies, all right? So going for the higher rep range, 15 to 20 to 30 repetitions. Now, with reverse fly, going on to the next one, with single joint, rotator cuff work, right? Having a band, putting it up to a power rack or whatever, and going in with it, so the anterior, and then the posterior going out with it. All right, and make sure as you do it, you keep your elbow in. That's going to be beneficial for you as well. Because believe it or not, doing those reverse flies and doing that shoulder work with the rotator cuff is going to help the joints just feel a lot better and allow you to throw faster and harder punches and exert yourself more and therefore get in better shape when you're doing your boxing specific work. Then moving on forward, I said I was going to address the concerns with running. Most often what I see with people running where they have trouble that holds them back from running is their shin splints, right? So doing tibia raises where you just have your leg there and you raise up, just even with just your own body weight. Because oftentimes that muscle is just really not activated a lot. And I noticed that boxing does a lot of calf, but not much on the front of the shin. And so it almost feels like the more boxing work you do, the more you get shin splints sometimes when you run. You know, at least that's my kind of anecdotal experience with boxers and with myself. And then you can do it with like laying down with a band on your toe as well to add some extra resistance as it does get stronger. But think about it. You're building your calf up so much with whether it's running, moving around the ring, or jumping rope. We want to balance that out, and oftentimes that's why you're having shin splints when you're running. It can make a big difference and make a big difference about a month of doing it consistently, sometimes even less. Then going on next, I've talked about this in other videos, but your grip. So towel pull-ups, taking a towel, hanging it around here, and you could do like fat grip, but one thing that I love, like I talked about in other videos about towel pull-ups, is that when you have that towel, try to have it in your hand so it's not a wide grip. Have it so it's closed all the way down, just like it is when you have your hand in the glove and you're punching someone in the face or in the body. You want to have that same closure of the hand because that's what we're training for. You want it specific to that. You know, it's like with isometrics, there is a carryover to more to other parts of the joint angle, but there's the most carryover to the specific joint angle. Again, specificity of training to what you're doing. And so therefore we want to get very strong with our grip at that exact point. You don't need to get strong at a fat grip right here. It's not what we're training for. At no point in boxing do you grip like this. But there's plenty of times, all the time, you grip like this when you hit, and we want to train that. How can you train and get stronger with it? Like this, and then again, you can add weight to it by attaching any type of weight to you, or even putting bands on your feet in a rack. Now, going on to a very important part, the neck. How do we strengthen up the neck for boxing? A lot of ways to do it, and I'm not going to go through all the ways to do it. I'm just going to talk about the ways that I find are the safest and effective, okay? Because to be clear, why I stopped boxing in 2010 is because I actually injured my neck from trying to strengthen it. I was pulling on my neck hard like this and taking all of my strength I could to pull it down and resist myself as I brought my neck up, and something happened. I have a lot of bone spurring, bone shards in my neck and things like that, and something happened and affected my spinal cord, and it caused a lot of trouble for a little bit of time. Now, safer ways to strengthen the neck. Hanging off the ring and just doing high repetition like this, that's great. That's great to build the base. Okay, I recommend that probably in the beginning more versus intermediate, but do that to build up the neck endurance and the base strength of it. All right, so make sure you do all angles though. So make sure you do here, and then you turn around, you lay on your stomach, do the opposite. I recommend not hyperextending. Don't go to the point where you're really putting a lot of pressure on those discs. Also in boxing, you don't need to strengthen your freaking neck so it's back like this. I don't even want to do it because it doesn't feel good on my neck. But you want to strengthen here and below. Here and below, that's it. And then side to side off the ring side as well. Here, here, here. Because you just want to build up the strength in these pathways or in these angles. But now once you've built up that base, then a great thing to incorporate is a modified form of bridge. Oftentimes, when people do bridges, again, they go to that more really almost hyperextending of the neck and causing a lot of pressure on the discs. Not a big fan of. What you can do, though, is go up against whether to start off power rack, right, here, and time it. And that's one basic way to start it off. You can do that forward and backwards. You could even do it side to side, figure that out for yourself. And then as you progress, you go down and do it on the floor. So it's here. Just make sure when you're doing it on the floor, you're not doing the top of the head because that's not that much benefit. We want to get good at resisting things this way. The more we can get good at resisting things this way, the better we're going to be, the less our head is going to snap around, and theoretically, the less you're going to get hurt, but definitely the less your head's going to snap with punches and make it clear that you get hit. All right. Then last one, when we're talking about one area, is think about it with all the multi-joint movements: deadlift, squat, a press, things like that. Anything really where you're standing and having weight that touches your upper body in any way, shape, or form, you're working your core. All right. But you could work your core more specifically. Yes, it's great to do a lot of calisthenic stuff, whether it's like bicycle crunches, sit-ups, things like that. That's great. And you can do a lot of repetitions of those, and yes, it builds it up. Also, by the way, with the running, running helps condition the core, helps make it stronger, and build that endurance as well. All great things. But we're talking about strength. So one of my favorite things that builds up a lot of strength in the core is the hanging leg raises. So we're here, hanging, get a slight bend to the arms, will help you out. And then from there, bring it up here, drop it down as slow and control as you can. You might not be able to do a ton of those to begin with, but that's a great way to build up your core strength. You can also do it off to the side and off to the side. And if you can't get it up there like that, then just bring it here. Bring it in front, down, up here. Or you could get a swing to yourself to get it up there and then do this isometric portion slowly to therefore build up some of that strength. And then with time, you'll get stronger and stronger and stronger. Key is, though, is don't be completely straight arm. Have that little bit of tension in the arms, because that will help you get it up all the way. But I find that is a big, big benefit to building up the core muscles. Because think about it, with all these other movements we're doing, we're not doing like 100 necessarily. But with core work, you end up having to do like 100 and stuff. And then there's just not that much engagement going on after a while, after you get to a certain level of conditioning. That, you'll feel it engage, all that. So now that leads me to some concerns and details we need to talk about with weightlifting. If you're a boxer, again, beginner and intermediate, I've seen it happen with both, but specifically beginner, there's a reason why I'm talking about strength training second to conditioning. Because if we strength train a lot, and most guys are not going to be afraid of strength training, they're going to be freaking doing it, whether you ask them to or not, or even if you tell them to not, they're still going to be doing it. So what I've seen with fighters is that they'll tend to hit the weights too much and they won't hit the conditioning enough. All right. So again, on your hierarchy of importance, conditioning, obviously sports specific. And then second to that, something like running that's going to help you aerobically. Those are paramount. I've seen plenty of guys get beat up by guys that they're not as strong as because they were conditioned to go and last. You're not going to blitz guys out once you get past super newbie level. You're not going to blitz guys out of there in the first round. Okay? Trust me, I've tried. Like, I spent too long trying to do that, and it's going to stop working. And then round 2 and 3, you're going to fall apart. And the guy that actually was spending time working on his aerobic conditioning is going to start piecing you up. And you're not going to win. Okay? Now, with the weightlifting, the downside can be it does get you tight. It does get you tight. Yeah, no, weights don't slow you down. They don't make you slower and all this other nonsense, right? The old school lore. But where that old school folklore comes from is, I believe, guys that are freaking lifting crazy heavy and they're lifting all the time, and then they come in the gym trying to box, and they don't have the skill of boxing, number one. But number 2 is they're tight. They're tight from lifting, and they're also just tight in the way that they do things, because when you weightlift, you want to be tight. So that's where I can see can have a big drawback. So I highly recommend you, more as a beginner, stick to the conditioning aspects and maybe some of the single joint stuff like reverse flies, rotator cuff, neck, and grip, because that's not going to tighten up so much of your body that's going to affect your boxing performance and you having skill acquisition. All right. Now, let's talk about the difference between strength versus muscle building, okay? What's the difference? The difference is motor recruitment versus fiber damage, okay? We're not trying to, for instance, damage the fibers and everything else so they can build back better and cause hypertrophy. What we're trying to do as an athlete that's in a weight class is to get stronger, all right? And how do you get stronger? By recruiting more muscle fibers. You can have someone that is the same exact weight as you and have the same exact muscle as you, but they are stronger than you. And what it is that they're able to recruit more of the fibers that they do have to perform the exercise. And so that's the big difference. You got to realize that you can have guys that are literally lighter than you that are stronger than you, because instead of recruiting maybe 70% of their muscle fibers, they're recruiting 80% of their muscle fibers to do the movement. Now, how do you increase the ability to do that? By lifting weights and by putting some poundage on the weights. And again, not overdoing it. A good area that I like to stick around is around maybe 3 to 5 sets of around 5 repetitions, because it's going to allow you to cause more muscle recruitment because you're going to use a little bit more weight, but you're hopefully not going to just completely max yourself out. Also, don't try to max out. Don't try to necessarily, as a boxer, you're not trying to max out and hit new PRs and things like that. You are just focused on increasing motor recruitment, and that's it. And again, when it starts to detract from your boxing performance or from your specific boxing training, back it the hell off. Stop doing it. Do less of it. Take some time off. Now, another concern is, let's talk about as we go into a fight. So oftentimes as an amateur boxer, you won't have scheduled fights months out. You'll maybe have a big tournament you're going to get ready for, but when you're doing these club fights and things like that, it's a week in advance, 2 weeks in advance, maybe 3, maybe a month, whatever. So that week of the fight, back off the weightlifting, and back off the conditioning about 3 or so days before. Start titrating it down so you can have yourself good and rested. I would much rather have a slightly undertrained boxer versus a slightly overtrained boxer, okay? Slightly overtrained boxer is going to be stale. He's not going to be as sharp. There's going to be a lot of things that are not going to go our way in the ring versus the guy that's a little bit fresher, all right? And also, too, if you're going into a tournament where you're going to be fighting multiple days, that becomes a dramatically massive factor. And that's actually one little quick tip I want to mention, is that the things like ice baths and things like that, that's all fine and good. It increases blood flow and whatnot. A great use for it is actually when you are doing a multi-day tournament. You are going to be fighting on Monday, fighting on Tuesday, fighting on Wednesday. You going and getting in some cold, super cold water is going to be beneficial to help you recover between those fights. All right, so that's just a little tip that is 100% validated by science, and I definitely support that. But as far as just in your general training, for instance, like, I'm going to be doing a hard day today, so I'm going to do an ice bath afterwards. It's cool if you like it and you want to do it, but it's just not that necessary, because we're about just building up the conditioning of yourself as an athlete and allowing your body to recover as well, versus with the ice bath, what that does is it's kind of like a temporary recovery that allows you to perform again at max levels the next day versus just long-term gains over a long time. Last thing on concerns with the weightlifting that to watch out for is don't start maxing out your calories, right? If you keep your calories in check, right? Obviously, make sure you get enough protein just as an athlete in general. But if you keep your calories in check, you shouldn't gain that much muscle if you're doing weightlifting. And again, if you're doing it in this way, where you're not trying to max out, you are focused on recruiting the fibers, getting stronger in these movements that you can apply to the sport of boxing. All right? Now, final points to wrap up. Factors that we need to take into consideration with strength and conditioning for boxing. Burnout. You can get burned out doing running all the time. You can get burned out doing your boxing specific work all the time. This is more for intermediates, okay? But beginners still listen because this will be you hopefully down the road. But you can get burnt out on doing the same stuff all the time. And I see it happen to people as they go through a few years of boxing, and you can just see them getting kind of stale. And so that is where you do see, especially then as you get past and to more advanced levels, you do see guys doing a lot of different things, a lot of kind of odd, goofy stuff. But the problem is beginner and intermediate start doing it where it's like, dude, that's not your basics. Don't focus on that. So part of that is just keeping the athlete fresh. And so feel free, if you're getting stale, to mix up. Like I said, in the conditioning portion, if you have some other sports that you like to do recreationally, do those as well, because those help keep you active. They help you from getting stale. Versus if you become this like absolute purist of like everything I'm going to do is just pure boxing and that's it. It's going to be hard on your body, a lot of wear and tear, and then also a lot of just staleness and just over repetition in your mind. And that's like heck, like we've merged these locations together. Some of my boxers have started to do some other disciplines not because they're going to necessarily compete in those disciplines, but it's just going to help give them a fresh feel that allows them to still get their body moving in a dynamic way and in an athletic way that isn't just the exact boxing stuff that they've been doing for years. Okay? And I talked about fight week, so that was already gone over. And then I want you to remember that there's many ways to do things. There's many ways to get in shape. If for whatever reason you're not able to run, or for whatever reason you're not able to do some of these specific things I'm talking about, that's not a make or break. There are plenty of guys that have never done any of the specific things I've talked about, and they're still successful. So remember, at the end of the day, there's many pathways to get there. These are just pathways that I have found through experience of working with fighters and with myself that are probably the most direct, at least that I've found, and simple. Direct and simple. You can write out an advanced periodization program for yourself or have someone do it, spend the money to do that, and try to follow it and everything else. But more oftentimes than not, what I find happens in those situations is you still have to take into account day-to-day how you're feeling and all the varied conditions that the body is in, right? Stress, right? It's like with doing all this work I've been doing over the past week. It's like if my workout required me to max out or push a little bit harder or something like that, I would have to change that. So there's become so much consideration. So that's where the more we can keep it simple to adapt to changing lifestyles and things like that, the more successful you're going to be in the long haul as a boxer. Remember, if you become a beast, or rather, if you want to become a beast, focus on the basics. So the basics and the base is what's going to make you a beast, not some special cool thing. Because remember, too, stuff you see on the internet, stuff you see on Instagram or whatnot, it's on there for a reason because it looks cool versus is effective. And that's something we really just have to watch out for in our modern world. Is it's all based off of the hype of it. And it's like with the oxygen masks, right? I remember when you saw TV shows with guys training with oxygen masks, like with The Ultimate Fighter, and then everyone's wearing an oxygen mask in the gym the next day or the next week. If it looks, remember, it's out there and it's on video oftentimes, or even I know too, with like I've had fighters where we've done like a little kind of workout where someone's going to be there to take pictures or whatnot. And even myself telling you all this stuff, we're not going to do some of these basic stuffs. I mean, who wants to see somebody like do a deadlift? Who wants to see somebody just shadow boxing? We'll do some extra little fancy stuff, some fun mitt work, things like that, things that it's going to look cool and to the boxing fan, but not necessarily is a representation of what we're doing day to day. All right, guys, if you like this video, make sure you click like, make sure you click subscribe, comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know how you might implement this into your training, and appreciate your support. Watch out for the next video.